Hey Star Trek fans, Dan Gunther here. Today is a really big day in the area of Star Trek news. We've got, of course, the big Comic-Con Hall H panel for the upcoming Star Trek series coming up later today. But before we get to that, I wanted to make a quick video about some of the news stories that have come out in the last few days prior to Comic-Con. And including some news coming out of some stuff we've learned from the Picard exhibit at Comic-Con as well. So let's jump right into those stories. The first big story that's making headlines again, this has come up a few times in the last little while, but right now it seems like this is a very serious push. The CBS Viacom merger that, of course, we have heard hints about in the past, looks like it might be coming in the near future. Now, I know this has been said a number of times, but there are a few things that make it look like this is really on the horizon right away here. The expectation is that there could be an announcement made by August, and it seems that the Star Trek merger in particular is one of the driving forces behind this push. CBS and Viacom have been split since the year 2005, at which time the movie properties and the television side of Star Trek have been separate from each other. Talks for a merger initially broke down in 2018, but in April of this year, it seems as though those talks were back on again. According to a report from The Hollywood Reporter, some insiders, only on deep background but with a straight face, say that putting Star Trek back under one roof is indeed one important reason to reunite Viacom with CBS, much like Disney has worked hard to keep as many Marvel characters as possible in its singular House of Mouse. For that matter, Mission Impossible could also use some continuity, as Viacom has the films, while CBS ran the original series from 1966 to 1973. CBS has, of course, made a number of plans for the future of Star Trek, and they would be the purchasing power in this particular merger. So it looks like the push is really coming from them to get all of Star Trek under one roof. And I personally have to say, I think this would be very good for the franchise. So we'll keep an eye on this story and bring you news as it develops. Some interesting news about one of my favorite Star Trek films came out of Comic-Con during the Inglorious Trexperts panel at Comic-Con. This year, of course, is the 40th anniversary of Star Trek the Motion Picture, and apparently an audience member, David Fine, who is the producer of the 2001 director's edition of the motion picture, indicated that talks are in the works for a 4K remaster of the director's edition of Star Trek the Motion Picture. This, to me, is the definitive version of this film, and I loved it when it came out in 2001. Star Trek the Motion Picture has a special place in my heart. It was the thing, believe it or not, that got me hooked on Star Trek as a kid. I know not a lot of people can make that claim, but for me, Star Trek the Motion Picture is a very important part of the Star Trek universe, and the director's edition from 2001 is just the definitive realization of that film. So to see it in high definition, previously it was only released in standard definition DVD, that would be amazing to be able to see it in high def and ultra high def, so 4K. I would love to see that come to fruition. And finally, a bit of news from the Picard exhibit at the San Diego Comic-Con. Now, this exhibit features a number of artifacts from Picard's life, as well as some tidbits about his history, including a little bit in the kind of unknown years between the end of Nemesis and the current Star Trek Picard series coming out later this year. Now, this period of time has been covered extensively by the novels, but they, of course, are not canon. And it looks like after a lot of wondering whether things would follow the novel continuity or allow it to exist without disrupting it too much, we've gotten a bit of word that that might not be the case, thanks to a caption on the model of the Enterprise E at the exhibit, which says in part, "Admiral Picard commanded the Enterprise E until 2381, before he was promoted to Admiral and given a special assignment by Starfleet Command." Now, 2381 is a few years before where the current novel continuity is, which is 2386. So that does look like it would negate a number of years of the novel continuity, which is sad to someone who loves the novels like me, but not entirely unexpected. That said, David Mack posted this on Twitter in response to a bit of fan outcry about this, so very curious to see the author's plans and how this will be dealt with going forward. We do, of course, have a new TNG novel coming in October, Collateral Damage by David Mack, which will possibly wrap up the current novel continuity, but it remains to be seen exactly what happens. Interestingly, David Mack was also asked on Twitter who is writing the first Picard novel, and David said he's not allowed to reveal that, but it has been decided. So looks like we are getting novels for Star Trek Picard. I mean, nobody's really surprised about that, but really excited to find out what's going on in the world of Star Trek novels going forward. So stay tuned for that. We'll have more news on that as it develops as well. So as I mentioned, today is the big Hall H presentation for Star Trek Universe, they're calling it, at the San Diego Comic-Con, in which Star Trek Discovery, Star Trek Lower Decks, and Star Trek Picard will all be represented. So the Star Trek Discovery Season 3 panel will take place at 11:30 a.m. Pacific. It will reveal some of the new cast members that will appear in Season 3, and there will also be an update on short treks. Those are the short 15 to 20 minute episodes that came in between Season 1 and Season 2. We will be getting more of those, and we'll get some more details today on that. A number of key cast and crew members will be at the panel, including Alex Kurtzman and Sonequa Martin Green, and it will be moderated by Tig Notaro. After that, Star Trek Lower Decks has its panel at 11:50 a.m. Pacific today. Mike McMahon, the head writer who came over from Rick and Morty, will be there alongside surprise guests, and that will look at the casting for the series and reveal the first footage. So definitely looking forward to that. I'll bring you some news on that when we get it. And the third and final panel, arguably the most anticipated of them, 12:10 p.m. Eastern, Patrick Stewart will come to the stage, appearing alongside other cast members to talk about Star Trek Picard, and this will be followed by an exclusive San Diego Comic-Con trailer and imagery from the show. Expect that to show up online fairly shortly thereafter, and I'll of course have a look at that and give you my thoughts. Michael Chabon will be joining him. He's the showrunner for Picard, as well as co-stars Alison Pill, Michelle Hurd, Evan Evagora, Issa Briones, Santiago Cabrera, and Harry Treadaway. So very much looking forward to that, and we'll bring you that news as soon as we're able to. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will probably see you later today or later this weekend with a lot more news from the San Diego Comic-Con.